Good evening. This is Frank Passaro, and I'm organizing this screencast in order to better prepare students for the lesson plan activity that they have for EDU307, and more generally for their lesson planning in their future teaching career. When Zerillo published his text, he initially called this chapter Lesson and Unit Plans. In his text, he now refers to it as Social Studies Lesson and Unit Plans. And in the chapter, what he's focusing on are simple guidelines to help you with effective planning, instruction on writing objectives, perspectives on using two kinds of lesson sequence, direct instruction and the concept attainment model, 6 principles to study, and a third grade sample unit on boats. Now that comes directly from page 26 of the text, and I will be referring to the text throughout. So if you're taking notes on this, please use your textbook and follow through as I proceed. The overview of the chapter is what I just gave you. However, let's get into more specifics. First, we want to talk about some general guidelines for planning social studies lessons. These general guidelines are not much different from any other subject matter. However, we want to be able to do a number of things within a social studies lesson. Lessons that are teacher directed and involve the entire class, called group lessons, are appropriate in social studies. Despite the fact that we want students to be engaged personally, we can engage them through the activities that we do and the technology we choose to use. We also want to think about lessons designed for small groups or individuals. These lessons might be cooperative learning groups, they might be pairs. Whatever they are, what you're trying to do is get the students more engaged, more actively involved in the learning that they're doing. Lessons that place the teacher in a less central role are also appropriate. While small groups can be open to student activity, they also, in many cases, come back to the teacher as the director. In some cases, students can be allowed to come to conclusions of their own and develop these conclusions in a meaningful way. Lesson plan formats can be in a number of different styles. One, the comprehensive lesson plan, which is what back in the olden days before the earth cooled when I was a student were called large lesson plans. Comprehensive lesson plans include an overview, resource materials, standards, content objectives, process objectives, values objectives, teaching sequence, and evaluation. You'll see that in figure 2.1 on page 30. Well, a more useful piece for teachers are the abbreviated lesson plans. Once you've learned how to do a large lesson plan, a lesson plan that includes all the pieces, you can quickly abbreviate it into a lesson plan book grid. You can also do a 3-column single sheet where you write the activities that you want to do. These two methods are acceptable in this course. However, what I'd like to see you do, and what I'm going to require you to do, is at least one overview, comprehensive lesson plan. Also want to be able to write lesson objectives. Those lesson objectives are very important as they'll be trying to get you to focus in on what you want students to know and be able to do. It's also going to require you to be able to focus in before the teaching of the unit on the student's ability that you want to develop or the knowledge that you want them to gain through the lesson. You're going to want to understand Bloom's taxonomy in the cognitive domain on pages 33 and 34. And as you move through the lesson plan, you're going to want to be able to develop that lesson plan in a meaningful and appropriate way. The teaching sequence perspectives are discussed on pages 35 and beyond. Direct instruction, concept attainment. We talked a little bit about that in teaching the social studies, but we want to be able to define direct instruction, define what the concept attainment model means. We'll be doing that throughout the lecture that I do in class. The text on pages 36 and 37 and moving on to the top of page 38 focus on that. And finally, some principles for planning instructional units. Those principles begin with backward design. And backward design is something that was developed by a local celebrity, Mr. J. McTighe, who taught in Prince George's and in Howard County. Mr. McTighe talked about moving backward from what you want students to know so that you can focus directly on what you want the students to be able to do. Units also have to be integrated. Activities have to follow a logical sequence. Units should have a variety of resources, and those resources are going to be important, particularly in the lower grades. Those resources should include manipulatives, things that students can put their hands on. Finally, we're going to get into the principles of planning instructional units, and we can talk a little bit about that as we move through the evening. I want to thank you for listening and hope that this will help you as you're thinking about instruction.